You're listening to Behind the Lines, a podcast presented by inplayLIVE and powered by Pinnacle, the #1 sportsbook where winners play and never get limited. Go to pinnacle.com/inplayLIVE to sign up and get in the game.
And you are going to take all the action that you took and then punish the player, your customer, for playing on your site. If you have an argument against that, I want to hear it. Drop it below, because Tom, I got to say, like, I've seen a lot. Those are some insane stories.
That's nuts.
I mean, it's a good point, Pace, because I've never gone and tried to cash a bet in and they've gone, do you know what? It was 40-1. We're going to give you 60-1 because this other player was the wrong price. You know, if you're always cutting the odds, at some point you've got to increase the odds as well, haven't you? But that never happened. Yeah.
Hello, welcome in Behind the Lines, powered by Pinnacle and purifying the sports betting industry. I'm your host, Shane Mercer. Andrew Pace, founder of inplayLIVE, a community of like-minded sports bettors dedicated to long-term success. And on today's show, I'll have an advent calendar update for you. We'll learn about what that is in a little bit. If you're part of the community, you already know what it is, but stay tuned for that. It's coming down the pipe later. We'll do the gridiron grind and talk a little college football playoffs. But first, Tom Brownlee is the founder of Bookie Bashing, a betting service based in the UK. Welcome to the show, Tom. Glad to have you.
Yeah, thanks, guys. Good to be on.
There are many similarities between Bookie Bashing and inplayLIVE, at least when it comes to betting theory and ideology. I think we're going to find that there are a lot of differences too. But tell us more about what Bookie Bashing is, why you created it, and sort of where it fits into the sports betting ecosystem, at least in the UK.
Sure, yeah. So I think we're quite similar because we're coming at this from a background of theory, of mathematics, as opposed to traditional throwing darts at a darts board and tips and pick'ems and things like that. So Bookie Bashing has been around as a online service since 2015. So next year we come into our 10th year. But Bookie Bashing as a group of syndicated gamblers goes back nearly a decade before that. That was a group of guys from my university, Birmingham University in the UK, and we formed the syndicate. One Aussie, 4 British guys, and it was really to pull it's not just pulling the bet; it's to pull the knowledge, it's to pull the camaraderie. It's to pull together the mental strength when you go through losing runs. And there's always a guy who will get through that losing run when you're not willing to get up and place bets that particular day. And all of that combines into one. So, Bookie Bashing founded as just 5 Birmingham University mates back in, the late 2000s. So back in those days, I was a member of a few different gambling syndicates, mostly retail based. By this I mean we would literally visit shops in the UK high street and place our bets there, but because I was a member of a few of them, I could see overlap of effort. I could see that we were putting some effort in to work some stuff out here. So were these guys, and to begin with we thought, why don't we just bring everybody together into the same place and we can at least share certain bits of strategy and information. And we put an initial barrier of entry into joining the community, which was a tenner that just stopped any freeloaders or people that would just come and view, if you like, the forum as it was back then. And back in 2015, that's essentially all we were. We were sort of low barrier for entry, come in, share a bit of information, and it will all be the better as a result of that. And in the last decade, it seems to have taken off quite substantially from that very sort of humble beginning into the largest advantage value betting community in the UK, I think in Europe, although there's some people over in Greece that I don't really understand how big they are. So that's the background of it.
Wow, that's fascinating. So it just started with 4 guys, and then in person, everybody betting in person, to another to a larger group of people, but still all betting in person together. How many people would you say it was at that time, and now how many is it now?
So back at the beginning, it was, the five of us, we got together in my local pub for our annual general meeting, which mostly involved drinking and apologizing for not getting on bets that won and apologizing for getting on bets that lost. And I remember my business partner, Duncan, standing in my kitchen, and he said, "Why don't we just start a site? Why don't we open a site?" And I said, "Well, who's going to join it?" And he said, "Well, the five of us will be the first five members." And I remember saying, I don't know anything about IT. My background, I'm a chartered civil engineer. I was a chartered civil engineer until I went full-time professional gambling. And I just thought, I don't know, the people that I know will come and join, but I can't imagine anybody, outside of my circles will want to come and join that. By maybe 2017, 2018, we'd found one particular edge, and frankly, it was crazy that our subscription cost was £10 a month because people were using this edge to make tens of thousands of pounds a month. So we were really underselling our product at this time. You pay a tenner, you can make 20 grand. You're doing quite okay. And as word spread about that, we were lucky enough for one of our members to get in touch with us. He was an IT professional, and he said, "Guys, the theory's good, but the practice, your IT infrastructure is amateur at best." Duncan being an accountant, me being a civil engineer. If I can give you an example, in the UK, we have what are known as football coupons, soccer coupons in the shops. So you can go in, you can get a printout piece of A4, and it will list all the football games, and you can pick which game you want to bet on and put these into multiples, parlays, however you want to bet on them. So in the morning, we would run our models and we would work out our own odds for teams to win particular games. And then we would go into the shops and we would type up the coupon and then compare our odds against the coupon. And just by that comparison, we then put a table up on the site, and those are the teams to go and bet on. The problem is the second it goes on the site, it's out of date. We don't bring in any new information. It's not live. It's a JPEG sitting there. I mean, this is back in 2016 we're doing this. And our IT expert, if you like, came along and said, "I can build certain pieces of infrastructure where that's not going to be a static JPEG. It's going to be live. The inputs will change live, the outputs will change live, and all of a sudden we've got a 24/7 dynamic running tracker for these football coupons." And it was really, we were very lucky to have him as a member, and then him drive up to Worcestershire and say, "Can I join the team?" And when we saw what he could do, the answer was most definitely yes. So he became, if you like, the third member now of the Bookie Bashing team. And we've just gone from strength to strength since then.
Wow. So how many people are part of the group now?
So we fluctuate between about 400 and 700 members. We've had 2,000 to 3,000 through the door. We sometimes get people join for a month and we never see them again. We've had people that joined us in 2016 and are still with us in 2024. It's a rolling monthly subscription fee. A lot of the time people need a break. One of the worst things we can ever hear is if somebody hits a big win. We had someone use our horse racing tracker. They ended up in the tabloids in the UK, the Daily Mail, the Racing Post, because they used our horse racing tracker to pick 4 quite high priced horses. I think off the top of my head, 16 to 1, 20 to 1, 40 to 1, 33 to 1. They stuck them in a multiple. This multiple is known as a lucky 15. It comprises of, as you excuse the ambulance going by outside, it comprises of 15 different bets, doubles, trebles, a quadruple. And they all came in, and he placed a 50p lucky 15. He won £446,000 from this one particular bet. And we never saw him again because that was enough for him not to resubscribe the next month and go and do something else. So we were one down after that particular month because of the success that we'd had.
Wow.
Tom, that sounds like one of the smartest bettors that's ever existed.
Well, yeah, get in and get out.
Yeah, big time. Pace, I mean, this must sound so familiar to you because, it sounds like a very similar story to sort of the makings of InPlayLIVE.
Yeah, there's definitely some similarities there. I think the sport overlap is almost non-existent. So we might as well just push our communities together and
For sure.
and bring North America to Europe, right?
When
No, but
did you
Tom,
guys start at inplayLIVE? Can I ask when?
we launched for when sports returned in North America from the COVID break. So
Oh,
if
right,
you recall, if you recall at that time, the NHL and NBA, which are big sports that we bet on at inplayLIVE, they actually were in bubbles. So they had no fan arenas in like these controlled environments, and they had a real hard time with like one of the athletes jumped out of the bubble and went to a strip club one of the nights and then like got suspended and couldn't play.
Yeah, of course they did. I mean, you'd think one of
Yeah.
the safer places would be an NHL ice hockey rink for COVID because you've got the helmets on and it's freezing cold. But you live. We had a really interesting time during COVID because we were live throughout it, but the schools shut in the UK. And my daughter was 4 or 5 years old, and I was particularly annoyed because if you were a key worker, you got to send your kids to school. So 60% of her class got classified as a key worker. As a professional gambler, I was the opposite of a key worker. I had to have my kids at home. And we kind of paused a little bit on new model development, which was a bad time to do that because in soccer, they took away all of the crowds. And then the fundamental action within the game all fell away. There were fewer cards. There were fewer bookings. There were fewer corners. There were fewer goals. And unless you were betting the unders, which we weren't, you got absolutely hammered during the COVID times because of the lack of action. And another thing, all the away teams started winning because the home advantage was completely lost. If you were sharp enough to spot these trends at the beginning, you cleaned up. Unfortunately, my daughter was at home and I was homeschooling her and trying my best not to go stir crazy with all the pubs shut in the UK.
It's interesting that you bring that up because we bet on American football, which is obviously completely different than what we call soccer, right? European football. And when those stadiums emptied out, like the home away advantage was completely erased. No debate there. But the scoring was unprecedented because the noise of the crowd is such a major factor in American football. And we absolutely just cleaned up that season because it was.
So when you say that, you mean total points? The unders were hitting all of the time, were they?
No, overs were hitting.
The overs
like
were hitting all the time. But
And in American football, you can bet on the result of the drives. And at that time, sports betting had just been rolling out across the United States in kind of a wild, wild west type approach. And they were all competing for business with absolutely no idea of, I guess, the approach of risk that a sportsbook needs to take when they're managing risk. So I guess what I'm getting at is if you had a main market line, that you might take 5 figures of action before the game starts on, they were doing the same for their derivative markets. So they were taking the same amount of risk on a pregame side as they would take on a proposition for the next drive or the next result of a play in an American football game. So I remember that season, one particular moment where I was able to spin 5 figures on a punt. And I don't mean a punt as in a wager, because that's, you guys will reference a bet as a punt. I mean a punt, an American football where he kicks the ball away. And I'll never forget when that bet went in, because I was like, what is going on right now? Everyone's competing for each other's business. So we were betting on the result of the drives to be touchdowns for amounts of money. Now, like if you were to go do the same thing today, first of all, you wouldn't make any money because they've corrected a lot of the odds. Second of all, the scoring is nowhere near what it was that season. So it wouldn't have an expected value that I think would be positive or nearly to the degree that it was then. But third, you could only maybe get a couple $100 down or a couple £100 down in your case. That you're referencing there. But yeah, that season was nuts for us. And you hit the nail on the head. If you were doing something previously that was working before that year, I don't think the sport mattered. You were probably gonna see some variance that wasn't gonna be welcomed.
Yeah, anytime there's like a fundamental change, either in the rules of the sport or in something like a COVID lockdown or something like that, there's always opportunity to try and break everything down into first principles and look at it. I remember, didn't they change the rules in NFL a few seasons ago? Was it 2019, something like that, where they were protecting the quarterback a little bit more? And then the theory was, well, he's not going to get sacked as much, and so there's going to be more yardage as a result of that. But before the season starts, nobody really knows for sure how much that's going to correct. And yet it's going to have fundamentally huge differences on the outcome of the game. I mean, big swings in probability. So it becomes who can model that most accurately fastest as well. It's so easy halfway through the season to go, that would have been the most profitable, easy thing to do in the world. But halfway through the season, it's too late. You got to get there first.
Right. Totally. So you have a big dart tournament coming up. Did I say that correctly?
The PDC World Championships, as known as the start of Christmas, 15th of December. Darts is one of those things. It's barely a sport. It's more a pantomime in the UK. I've never been to the Ali Pali, the Alexander Palace in London. I've been to other darts events, but of all, like, the most minor darts event in the UK, the primary purpose of visiting that event is to get as much alcohol down your throat as possible and sing songs.
Sing songs, love it.
and barely in the background, you might notice that there is a professional sport going on at the same time.
Right.
But that is certainly secondary to proceedings. And the Darts World Championships takes it to a new level. It's almost like you have to turn up in fancy dress. The songs are ludicrous and funny, and the television launches it with all images of snow and jingles and Santa. And my kids love it, and they're only 5 and 8 years old, and they love watching the darts at Christmas. And I enjoy modeling the darts, especially the PDC World Championship, because this is something where it's quite difficult to get hold of data. And something like NFL Moneyline, I've never had an edge in NFL Moneyline. I don't have an edge in Champions League football. And one of the reasons is everybody's got the same data as me. They've probably got more. And there's a lot more intelligent mathematicians out there than me. So I'm not going to take them on. I'm going to go and find where I can get an edge. And years and years and years ago, I invested some money in asking somebody to start automatically collecting darts data for me for all kinds of random tournaments, not just the big players, but the players that come through the Africa Tour, the Asian Tour. Now you hit round 1 of the PDC World Championship, and you've got the most famous guy in the world, Michael Van Gerwen, versus some guy that's come through the African Tour. Nobody's heard of him. Nobody knows who he is. And critically, hardly anyone's got any data for him. But I know the last 4 or 5 games, he's hit an average of 84.7. He's throwing a 180 every 2.6 legs. And his average checkout is this. And because I've got that data, look, this guy's not going to progress through to the latter rounds. And the latter rounds of the PDC World Championships are quite hard to get an edge on, because it's the more well-known players and everyone's got good data for that. But rounds 1, round 2, round 3, especially with the shorter format, you can find some pretty decent edges there. One I'm looking at just now is the number of 170 checkouts in the PDC World Championship. So 170 checkout is the maximum checkout you can get. It's treble 20 bullseye. It's relatively rare. Running from 2019 up until now, there have been 3, and then 8, and then 7, and then 4, and then 6. Small sample size, but that's 6.25 170s per World Championship. So the expectation for this year, the standard has improved. The format is the same, but 6.25 would be on my lower ebb of estimation. And out there right now, I can see some bookmakers pricing up 7 180s, so just, 7 170s, which is half a 170 over the expectation I have for this tournament. They're pricing it up 6 to 1, maybe 5.0 plus 500. I'm making that closer to evens. And that's a really, really big bet. Anything, where I can multiply my money by 6, and I think it should be a coin flip. You don't get that equity quite a lot of the time. My first reaction is I must have done something wrong when this bet is this big. But just going off the averages since 2020. I don't know who's come up with this, but I don't think it's going to be around for much longer in the next few days. And before I second guess myself and too much, I'm just going to be sending all my runners out and getting on what I can get on in the betting exchanges. In the UK now, sharp bettors simply cannot bet at soft bookmakers. Bet365 is not an option. The Betfreds, the William Hills can't do that. But I can go to shops and I can use betting exchanges. And I'm going to be topping up as much as I can on 7+ 170s in the World Championships, because when that goes off next week, it's certainly going to be under 5-2, 2-1, something like that. So it's a bet for me right now.
Wow. I feel like you just dropped some extremely valuable darts knowledge on us, and I have no idea what to do with it.
Barbecue sauce.
Yeah.
That's it. Barbecue sauce, baby. That's awesome stuff, Tom. Really, really cool. And I love the angle there that you broke down. And I feel like I'm going to be searching up in Google how many 170s were in the PDC at some point in December, because I've never actually gotten into it. I've seen some of the clips on social media of some of the big moments that have occurred, and it absolutely looks electric. So, and I can feel your passion. I don't know if it's for the drinking or for the darts or for both, but I can feel it.
It's evening time here. But I mean, a little bit of after timing here. Last year there was a definite edge. There was a kid. He was 16 years old. He was barely old enough to play in the adult tour. He could only start playing in 2023 because they didn't allow 15-year-olds on the tour. But when he was 15, when he was 16, he was throwing darts that nobody had ever seen. The averages, the 180s. He was winning events on his first and second time. And all anyone could think is this has to regress to the mean. A 16-year-old not going to walk into the World Championships and win it. He's too young. He's too inexperienced. He's on fire now because he's new, but this is short term. And he went up at 100-1 to win the PDC World Championships. And we looked at him, and I min betted him, not max bet, because it was another one of those. I was second guessing myself that if he's 100-1, I've done something wrong to make him a lot shorter. He got all the way to the final. And if you were on an each way bet, you won a pretty decent payout on your place. Unfortunately, he lost to the world number one, Luke Humphreys. But that Luke Littler kid, he's one to look out for the future. He's unbelievable. He really is.
That's awesome stuff. But I think at the same time, one of the biggest challenges with expected value betting and expected growth is that when you see long odds, it can sometimes scare you.
Well, for sure.
The expected growth is so much less than a traditional, a minus 110, or what would you say fractional 9? What would that be for you? 9 over 10? Is that?
Yeah, odds on 9 to 10, 10 to 11.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Whereas your expected value might be higher on the 100-1, and your expected growth is far less, right? And like we've placed, some of our members just came off a really big plus 4,000 win in college football, and we had a 150-1 leg that ended up being one loss away from cashing in a close match too. So we've really had some of those long odds come through, and that's where the role of hedging obviously can play a massive factor in betting. Like I hate the word, I hate the process. But did you look at hedging that particular wager?
Hedging's for gardeners.
Love it.
We have a journey we've been on in the United Kingdom, and that is we have a massive problem with another winning community. So if you think 100% of bettors exist, 97% of those bettors I've heard are losing. Of the 3% that are winning, about 2.9 of those 3% are arbitrage players. There are those that seek out a bet and then will bet the other side. They'll put down £1,000 to make sure they win £2.50. Mm-hmm. Betting exchanges became very, very big and very, very popular in the UK. Up till about 2015, 2016, 2017. It's kind of amazing that they didn't turn into the most popular platform for betting for recreational punters because they offer the best odds. But as they became popular, so did the arbitrage. And then that caused a real big problem for sharp bettors getting on in the UK because, there's very little difference between a value bettor and an arbitrage player. And for the value bettors, we actually had to start looking to find value where the money didn't exist on the exchange. Because if we find a bet of Manchester United at 4-1, plus 400 and the plus 300 on the exchange, we can bet both sides of that and guarantee some profit. And then we'll turn up the next day and the bookmakers will not pay out for us, or they will and they'll restrict us. Last week, a guy called Rig Johnston. Have you heard of this guy?
No.
He's an American golfer. I've not heard of him. He came through DP World Tour, which is the European Tour qualifying school. I was talking to a shop. That school is so competitive. If anybody comes through it, they're playing the golf of their lives. Okay. So it's really interesting to watch the guys come through there because they're on fire. So he comes through there and, he goes down and plays the Ispis Handa Australian Open. And he's 175-1. What's that? 17,500, I think. And he wins it. And a load of people have gone and got on him at 175-1 at a particular Irish bookmaker that exists in the UK betting high streets called Paddy Power. So they've gone in and bet on him at 175-1. They walk in on Monday morning and Paddy just go, "We're not paying you. We're not paying you 175-1 anyway. We reckon we'll pay you about 125-1. And they skimmed off thousands and thousands of pounds, from people because they couldn't manage the book properly. And their argument, I think, is that he traded just a little bit lower than 175-1 on the exchange at the same time of these bets. So they could have been arbitrage bets. I'll tell you this. We're talking about the European Tour. 175-1, he would have traded for pennies. You wouldn't have been arbing him for very much. You might have got £2 on and laid those £2 and guaranteed yourself 12p. But they're using this as justification that it's a palpable error, a clear and obvious error. Exactly the same thing happened in the Barbasol Championship in 2022. That particular guy was Trey Mullinax. Again, and it was someone just like Riggs Johnson last week. We put him out in our model as a good bet at 175-1. He won. It was 10bet who we recommended that people bet with. They log onto their account on Monday morning. 10bet have decided to pay out at 100-1 instead of 175-1 for the same reason. They're saying it's a palpable error. It was a stale price. It was an arbitrage bet. The total amount of money they skim off their customer base was over £1 million. And this is a free rolling from them. It's disgraceful behavior. And for all the reasons lined previously, I'm slightly uncomfortable betting at very high odds because I'm now in a situation where I don't trust the bookmakers to pay out at them and play fair and square.
So let me ask you a couple things here. Okay. So the sports book has access to what exchanges are pricing any market at, as do we.
Yes, they do.
We head out as players, and we take a wager wherever it is, an exchange, whatever, and they can go back and change the odds of the bet because an exchange offered something that could be viewed as a £1 to £2 arb.
That's their justification. They don't say it out loud, but when I'm doing a deep dive into the reasons that they're using, the price came down on the exchange. And when you watch a horse or a golfer come down on the exchange, you can see the UK bookmaker odds follow it. So there's no more traders. There's no more smart money line makers at UK bookmakers. They are tracking the exchange. If you want to get a little bit clever, you can sometimes deliberately put money down on the exchange to manipulate a price and watch the bookmakers follow that false price. But and Paddy Power, they merged with Betfair Exchange, so their computer system is all in one now, and so that was the justification they used to the people that went in to try and get their money on Monday morning.
So the very company that they own being the reason why their company couldn't pay out the price that they offered.
That's what it's theft, is what it is.
It's theft. So Tom, just to continue here, 10bet. Now they were SB Tech here in North America.
Yeah.
Are they SB Tech still in the UK?
I think they left the UK betting market. Don't quote me on that because so many people have. But yeah, they were SB Tech, and
I'm playing on 10bet here right now. They have a new odds provider and they're a crypto casino now.
Yeah, okay, I see.
As you said that, I'm looking at my account with 10bet right now.
Now, can I give them some credit?
Are they SB Tech?
Yeah.
That is unbelievable.
Can I give them some credit?
Sure.
No.
Myself and Pete Ling, who you had on your podcast recently, we started leaning some pressure onto 10bet. We wanted to make this public. We didn't want to let it die. And I have to say, after maybe 3 or 4 days, the CEO of 10bet, who's over in Israel, arranged a phone call with me, and he explained to me what had happened, which is they opened up the book on Monday morning and they saw this million euro red figure. Then the justification for what they did, which was they freaked out and it was their entire year's golf profits down the pan, and a middle manager decided that it was a stale price and they were going to pay out at less. But then the CEO has reviewed all of the information, and he did make the decision to pay everybody out at 175 to 1 in the end. Everyone could log on to their account, they could withdraw their money, and then if they tried to place another bet, they found that their max stake was 1 pence and they were restricted in every sport and they couldn't get another bet on. But at least they did get their money at 175 to 1. And I do give them credit there. It's easy to make a mistake. It takes a little bit of a man at least to put your hands up and say you made a mistake and make it right. They maybe could have taken a few more bets from people, but that's a business decision.
Right. I honestly, you said you'd like to give them a little bit of credit. I'm going to give you a little bit of credit. Well done.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, can I just say we've been beaten into submission in the UK. When I announced what Paddy Power had done on X the other day, the number of customers who sided with Paddy Power was unbelievable. I thought everybody would be on the side of the punter, but there was, a lot of people coming out of the woodwork saying, well, he got what he deserved, or you're betting on an error, or this is a stale line, or you're using too many runners to bet on shops. I mean, this has come from years and years and years of the bookmaker telling the punter that they're badly behaved. And this narrative has been whipped up and people start to believe that it's true. And we're in a very strange place just now. We really are.
Well, let's play devil's advocate. Okay, let's play devil's advocate here. Give me the best argument that someone gave you that we could try to side with them being right, that the sports book was justified in this case with Paddy Power.
Yeah, so the various arguments were it was an error because it was top price. Now, I would just say someone has to be top price. And also William Hill were also 175 to 1, so they were joint top price. And
they paid.
And they did pay. That's right. Yeah. But they whether it was at the same time or not, whether the price had started coming in as a result of us tipping them out, I don't know. I mean, why they don't just close the book when they take too much money on one individual player, I don't know. I mean, the technology there must exist. But there are some crazy, crazy arguments used. And one of the craziest I've heard is I once well, it wasn't me. I had a runner go into a shop and place a bet, and the bet won 5,000 English pounds, and he went in to collect the money, and that particular shop said they weren't going to pay out to him because they don't take money from shop customers. They only take money from recreational punters. And they showed the terms and conditions that said that. So we took them to court, and they got took to task. The judge was pretty... He went pretty nuts at them for even trying that on. And we always get paid out in the end when we take them to court, but sometimes it's like pulling teeth. And again, this is part and parcel of betting in the UK. I've been in a betting shop the other day. If I go to Vegas and I put $100 into the machine, somebody comes over with a drink and asks me if I want a free glass of champagne, right? If I go into the UK, as I did the other week, and I put £20 notes into the machine, the manager called over from the counter and said, "What do you think you're doing?" And I went, "I'm betting on horses." And he went, no, you're not. And he pressed the button. And the reason he did that is I was just putting more £20 into the machine than he's used to. And he's suspicious of sharp players. And he made me feel like a criminal. He made me feel like a criminal as opposed to bringing me a glass of champagne.
Oh, this is like
Okay,
what this is just like what a soft book would be if it existed in brick and mortar. Like it's unbelievable. I can't.
Well, so on this note, if anyone is listening that has an argument to support the sports book, I actually don't want to fight or debate with you. I want to hear it. So if there is anyone listening right now that can justify what Tom just said, and I'm not talking about telling a different story, you posted the odds. You have the ability to change them. You have the ability to pull them when a certain amount of money comes in. And you are going to take all the action that you took and then punish the player, your customer, for playing on your site. If you have an argument against that, I want to hear it. Drop it below. Because, Tom, I got to say, like, I've seen a lot. Those are some fucking insane stories.
That's nuts.
I mean, it's a good point, Pace, because I've never gone and tried to cash a bet in and they've gone, do you know what? It was 40 to 1. We're going to give you 60 to 1. Because this other player was the wrong price. You know, if you're always cutting the odds, at some point you've got to increase the odds as well, haven't you? But that never happened. You know,
that's your top priced. Top priced is like there's sports books trying to make their name in North America right now, where they advertise being top priced. Imagine now the ad plays. You just bet on a Sunday NFL slate. And they say you can get the very best odds at Bet365 in North America. We're offering same day, no vig pricing. And then on Monday, they say, hey, guys, we fucked up. We have to change everything that we just did retroactively. So I'm not talking about for this Sunday. Retroactively, we need to go back and take all your money. Oh, my God. And you know what's crazy is I think about like the landscape in North America. And I think like, is this where we're heading? Because this is fucking nuts.
I mean, the error that the UK market made was that there are very, very few now statisticians and market makers and anyone sticking their neck out. If you look at a lot of the soccer games, they're all identical prices across the bookmakers because one person goes up and everybody copies them. But they have a lot of middle management whose job is simply to maximize the company's profits. Those middle management guys, they go through graduate training, which says, look out for arbitrage players. See if you can find areas where we can skim a little bit of money away from people. And look, as a professional gambler, if they ever try it on with me, I will always take them to court. But I feel sorry about the guys that are just in shop betting a fiver. Because if you bet a fiver and you're expecting £20 back and they give you £10 back, you're not going to go to all the effort of taking them into court. The sum of all of the money taken from the low wagering players must be extraordinary. And that's the big scam that I can see.
How often have you had to go to court?
5 times. Went to court 5 times. Won 4. Lost 1. The one I lost, other people who genuinely were nothing to do with me, I knew them, but I was not economically invested in their bets. I was completely separate from them. They went to court for exactly the same reason and they won. So the annoying thing was we had the same case, the same logic, the same problem. The problem was it was a 25 to 1 bet at William Hill Shops. There to be a goal in the first half of every game in League One, in French League One, that particular Sunday. On that Sunday, Paris Saint-Germain were not playing because they were playing in the Champions League final, which we knew weeks in advance. So there was a goal in every game. And when we all went to get paid out, they said, you're not having 25 to 1, you're having 5 to 1 because Paris Saint-Germain weren't playing. We thought they were. Oh, we didn't think they were. We knew they were in the Champions League final for a long, long time. And we had £200 on it. So at 25 to 1, we thought we were owed £5,000. Other people had more money than that. The other people, they won their cases. They got their money. Exactly the same case. We lost it. Sometimes you just got to throw your hands in the air and say, you know, we tried our best. There was nothing more we could do.
Tom, you went to court for £5,000?
Yes, I did.
Wow, that's impressive.
Yeah.
Good for you.
I mean,
you got to make a stand sometime. You hate it. I absolutely hate it.
Jane, I might be motivated to go get the money from
I was
some
just
books
gonna say.
right now. Like, I'm on my screen right now. I've got dead money on like four books that I kind of have given up on. I might, maybe you've reinvigorated me, Tom. I'm ready to go light it up. Jeez, wow, good for you, man.
You know, and
I mean, trust me, by the way, you can't get a UK bookmaker to lay a lot more money than that these days, unfortunately. You're not going to see much more than £5,000 in a single payout.
Okay. So I have a question for you then.
Mm.
I know you have kids, you have a family, you have a life in the UK. Have you thought about moving somewhere where the grass is greener?
Well, I mean, I know what my edges are in the UK, right? So I use various different edges, and one of the particular edges that's very strong is something called each way bias. So do you know each way betting, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Now, as far as I'm aware, in North America, in other jurisdictions, in Greece, in Australia, it doesn't work in the same way as the UK. We fix our place price to the win price. So if it's 4-1 on the win, the place will be 1/4 of that. It'll be evens. Okay. Whereas there'll be two different prices in Canada or America, not in every book, but in a lot. So there'll be 4-1 on the win, but then the place is completely separate. It's its own number. Now, what we're able to do with that structure is we're able to find bias in the market. We can find particular events where that shouldn't be a linear relationship, and we can hit it on an industrial fashion. And we do this across golf. We do it across horse racing, and it's an extremely lucrative money earner. If you like, it's quite boring because there's not that. Once you figure out how to do it, there's not that many mathematics left to do. It just churns in the background over and over again. Send runners out into shops. They place the bets on the horses, and this amount of money rolls in very sort of consistently with if you're placing singles, 5% return on investment. Long term, if you're placing multiples, about 20% return on investment. If I could go into America and do something like that, I would, but I can't because I don't see the opportunity. And in America, I love NFL, but I've no idea how to model it. I tried. I have a background in statistics. I can model football, soccer, because I've spent so long doing it. I got it right. I can model dots. I can't model American football for the same reason I can't model rugby. I have a real problem with these sports which jump in points distributions of 5s and 2s. It makes my life really hard and twists my melon. So, and I can see where the edges would probably be in NFL, and this is same game parlays. So something like tonight, Joe Burrow to throw over 300 yards to get 3 passing touchdowns and the Bengals to win. Look, that kind of intercorrelated modeling where if he throws over 300 yards, he's more likely to get passing touchdowns and the Bengals are more likely to win. That's a difficult mathematical problem to work out. And I don't reckon anyone's got it perfectly spot on. And because nobody's got it perfectly spot on, I reckon I've got a chance. I've got a really good chance at taking on the traders. Whereas the Bengals to win, unfortunately, I'm just going to put my hands up and say that's too hard to do because it's not been solved, but it's been, the people doing those mathematics are way further down the line than I am.
Right. I didn't necessarily mean the United States, but perhaps Costa Rica or something like that. But I want to dive into a couple of things you just said there. First of all, I'm thinking about Louis Oosthuizen. I think it was the U.S. Open, and it was Phil Mickelson is walking down the fairway, and it looks like Phil's going to get one of his most storied wins at a major. And I could be misremembering this, but I think Louis Oosthuizen needed an eagle to force a playoff, and he laid up. And it made me think about your each way analogy. And I thought to myself, what a fucking loser. Meanwhile, if I had an each way bet that had some edge, I'd be just going nuts because he didn't risk dropping lower in the standings. So that's a really interesting analogy. And just if you guys don't understand the analogy that he's making, I'll put it in some North American terms. Let's say that you took a long shot to win the Super Bowl this year. Who's someone at the start of the season that maybe could surprise people? Let's go with the Steelers. So you want to say Vikings?
I mean they fit the bill.
yeah, sure. Vikings, Steelers, whomever, right? Well, if the Vikings are facing the Chiefs are a bad example because they always seem to win by 1 score or less, but a team that's notoriously thumping other people. Let's say they're facing the 2000 and 2011 New England Patriots or 2007 New England Patriots, and it's like the Giants against the Patriots in that game. Let's say you have huge odds on the Giants, but then they're -11 underdogs in the Super Bowl. If the each way is paying the same divided by 2, right? To go to the Super Bowl as to win it, you got huge theoretical value there because you're not handicapping the opponent, right? So that's what he's getting at with the each way lines there. Now, for just because you brought up the SGP, I want to actually flip your thinking a little bit there, because the Joe Burrow passing yards are actually more correlated with them losing the game. So
Really?
that's where things aren't handicapped properly.
This is where my American football lack of like in-depth strategy comes in, you know?
And the recreational players, they're going to say, I want Joe Burrow to pass for 300 yards. I want Jamar Chase to catch for 80 yards. Hugely correlated wagers. Sportsbooks have handicapped that brilliantly. There isn't necessarily added value there. And in fact, there's added expected loss with putting those together. And then the Bengals to win, you throw that on. Whereas the flip side to it is if you were to take Burrow for 350 or 400, Chase for 100, and the Bengals to lose, that's actually correlated and pays way more, right?
Okay, so it's about getting these correlations that work in favor with each other.
Yeah. And there are teams of people across North America that are working on that in massive capacities right now. Now, with what we do, we're mostly betting live, so we'll try to capitalize on something like that live. But from a pregame standpoint, if you have a theory, there's some crazy SGP odds that exist. But again, when you boil it all down, the expected value is still going to be very similar to any pregame handicapping sides. It might be double, which you'd be like, that's a huge difference, Pace. Like it might be 5 to 8% ROI instead of 3 to 4, but the hit rate is far less because we're looking at things that obviously have much higher higher probability of hitting.
These same game parlays, combo bets, we call them, they're very, very popular in the UK. And as you say, they're very recreational heavy. The bookmakers try and push customers towards them. We actually collect all of them in a model across all the bookmakers. We must collect 50, 100,000 different combo bets across a day. And of those, perhaps, 100 might be positive expectation. But the modeling, I do enjoy it. In football parlance, they will often do something, soccer parlance. They'll do, I think tonight, Wolverhampton Wanderers to get 3 goals and to get 8 corners, and Fulham to get 2 cards is, for example, 10 to 1. The interesting thing about this is that it's counterintuitive, because if Wolverhampton get 8 corners, they're less likely to get goals because the goalkeeper is saving all of those goals. So, to get those corners, they're not getting more goals than their pre-game expectation. So if you can work on that and work it out, there is a lot of value to be had. Doing what you guys do, which is using, I think, more intuition and your own eyes, to me is a lot more fun because it's less set and go. It's more traditional professional bookmaking. If I can give you an example of the 2015 Rugby World Cup. I don't know if you guys watched the Rugby World Cup.
No, but let it rip.
South Africa played Japan. South Africa are one of the best rugby teams in the world. Japan are not. And this is meant to be a rout for Japan. And I think the line was set before the game at 200 to 1 for Japan, higher than Riggs Johnson. They didn't have a chance. The points handicap, I think, was minus 48 for South Africa in a game where you traditionally get 40 points. So I was watching this game, and I don't do a lot of live stuff. I prefer doing the pre-game stuff, mostly because at Bookie Bashing, we don't have the technology to move the data fast enough, so we don't concentrate on live. But I'm looking at it. 10 minutes go by, and these two teams look equally matched. Like, Japan are smaller, and you think as time goes on over the game, South Africa will show their dominance. But they were in the scrum, and South Africa weren't winning it. Japan were up for this. They were excited. They were aggressive. They were the underdog coming through. And so I wonder what the line is now. And I look at the markets, the betting exchanges, and they're exactly the same as they were pre-match. They're 200 to 1. I think, how can that not have changed? Is anyone else seeing what I'm seeing? And so now the most amount of after timing ever. Look, I couldn't believe I was right over the markets, but I couldn't leave it alone. So another one that I minimum bet, and Japan ran out 34-32 winners in that game. There's no scenario after 10 minutes of that game where if you Monte Carlo analysis, if you ran that game 10,000 times, there's no way they win less frequently than one every 200 times. It was always a bet. And all you had to do was use your eyes, trust your gut, trust your intuition, and just understand when, the model makers, the line makers are just, they're fast asleep at the start of the match.
Love that story. Pace, that has to hit home.
Yeah,
that's what we do.
That sounds like every day of our lives. Really, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, good fun.
That's
good
awesome.
Fun.
Tom, I don't want to take up too much of your time, but I want to ask you, because you hit something off the top of the show that I want to get back to, because I think it's kind of interesting and I want to hear more about it. You mentioned a group that your group is maybe at odds with in the UK, and it sounds like there's you have a rivalry with another betting group. Is that right? And can you elaborate?
What's happened in the UK for a long period of time? I talked about the 3% of winners, 2.9% of those are arbitrage players. And they're pretty annoying because they take away a lot of the value from the value bettors. So, I mean, I don't want to bet both sides of something to guarantee a risk-free profit. I find it so dull. And also I don't like the restrictions that come with it. But over time, large arbitrage communities have popped up in the UK, and they were sold to non-sports bettors. So there's this forum called Mumsnet for stay-at-home mums. And the arbitrage communities would go on to Mumsnet and say, do you want to make money from home? It's risk-free. Come along and use our software. And if you get a bet, you can bet Henman to win and Henman to lose, and no matter what happens, you'll end up with some money. And if you get the right odds, you can do your arbitrage. So as they did this, we had to find lines, find markets which couldn't be hedged, which a lot of it was the same game parlays, the combo bets, things like that, or low liquidity markets, or obscure markets. So not Manchester United to win, but perhaps Hodgland to have 3+ shots on target. It's slightly harder to hedge the other side of that. Over time, until 2022, 2023, we coexisted in the same space, but tried to ignore each other. But all of the arbitrage players are now restricted and can't get any money down. And so their large communities are now pushing out value betting software. And they're doing it, if you like, slightly irresponsibly, if you ask me, because they're pushing out, high variance, high volatile sports betting, which requires knowledge about bankroll management and, winning runs and losing runs. And they're pushing it out to groups of people who have been used to a steady risk-free income. And with that, it is just making it a little bit harder to get money down in the UK on positive expectation bets, because it's something called the tragedy of the commons. The tragedy of the commons is a concept in economics where the sheep will happily graze on the land until the farmer's neighbors notice how healthy the sheep is. So he puts his sheep on there, and then everybody's grazing and the grass dies and the sheep die. So it's the same concept as the tragedy of the commons.
That makes a lot of sense. And that rings true in a lot of ways for some of the conversations that I've had in the betting community. Do you find that this even happens within your own group where, you find something that's exploitable and everybody goes to it quickly and then it disappears?
Yeah, sustainable edges are tricky. They are, you really got to figure out what not grown, but what can be managed, amongst a lot of people and what can't. So, for example, you might find, even something like a hole-in-one in the Masters. If enough money goes down on yes or no on a hole-in-one in the Masters, those lines will be cut across the board, and it's not going to take a lot of money to shift those lines. So figuring out what's sustainable and what isn't sustainable is difficult. In the UK, in William Hill betting shops, at the beginning, I talked to you about, we were £10 a month and some groups were making 10 grand a month out of us. And how that worked was, in William Hill betting shops, there are these screens and there's 25 buttons underneath them, and there would be 25 bets of the day. And I remember looking at one of those bets thinking, that's a crazy price. But it's quite complicated to work out, because it was something like the New York soccer team to have more than 3.5 corners in the first 15 minutes of the game. So you've got to know quite a few things here. You've got to know about clustering of corners. You've got to have an expectancy, time distributions, Poisson distributions. Very difficult to work out in shop.
Yeah.
So what we did is we found the William Hill in England that opened the earliest. It was in a county called Derbyshire. And we paid for someone to go in with coffees for the staff to keep them sweet. And he'd be stood outside as the door opened, and he'd go in and he'd take photographs of all 25 of them. And they'd be sent through to us, and we would have a team of people with a number of databases that could very, very quickly go through all 25 bets. And we found out that on average, about 22 of them were negative expectation. One was positive expectation, and one or two were just huge. I mean, they were massive expectation, 200, 300%.
Wow.
And they would take sizable bets at the time on these. So if it was 10-1, they'd happily take £1,000 on it. They'd put the slip through a couple of times if you wanted them to, because they were convinced these bets were bad. They couldn't price them up well enough over in Gibraltar headquarters. So we started smashing them along with a number of other teams, but then the worst possible thing happened. They all started winning. You see, you can place good bets, but good bets don't have to win and bad bets don't have to lose. You know, great positive expectation bets can lose and no one will ever know how good they were. But unfortunately, all the good bets started winning. Everybody made a heap of money, and then William Hill shut them off. And that was back in about 2019. To this day, in 2024, you can walk into a William Hill on the high street. You see that screen. It's got 25 buttons on it, but they don't do anything anymore because we killed it. So we weren't sustainable enough.
You can hang that in the rafters, Tom. It's a banner of...
Yeah, well, there's a few people that aren't best pleased with me, but, you know, if we hadn't done it, somebody else would have. So.
That's awesome. That's, kudos to you, though. I mean, you did it.
100%.
Yeah,
that's 100%. Incredible. Tom, I think why don't we leave it there on that incredible high note? You shared some fascinating stories with us, Tom. I would love to have you back on the show because I think we could probably talk for hours on end. No problem.
Hey, Shane Pace, it was really good chatting to you guys this evening. Thank you very much.
Tom, before you go, is there anywhere where people can hit you up if they want to reach out, they want to connect with you? What's the best way to get hold of you?
Sure. I mean, we run the Bashcast podcast in the UK, so you can go and have a listen to that. And I'll be warned, it's about 50-50 me moaning about things that, you know, I find irritating in life and sports betting. And if you're in the UK and have access to UK betting markets, you can come along and have a look at bookiebashing.net. We've got a load of trackers and tools and things to aid people on their journey to be profitable bettors. So, and finally on X, I'm at Tom Brownlee, Brownlee.
Wonderful. Awesome. Tom, thanks again for coming on the show. Really appreciated this conversation.
No worries, guys. Thank you.
All right. We talked a lot about European football in the last interview, but now it's time to bring it home, and it is the gridiron grind time. And we've got John Wilson, the great Gosu Thune, with us for it as always, or mostly always. John, glad to see you. Glad to have you in this week. Let's start with college football. We've got the playoffs set. John, just give us a college football painting, if you will.
Yeah, sure. So SMU getting in over Alabama despite losing that championship game, that was great for us. We had SMU before the season started at 12.0, I think, to make the playoff, which turned out to be a great bet because they didn't even have to win their conference to do it. So looking forward to seeing what they can do in the playoff, and just not sad at all that Alabama's missing out this year after a couple really bad losses. Just, you know, maybe we all need a little bit of a break from some of those brand names every now and then. But yeah, there's some really interesting first round matchups. So I think we have Tennessee and Ohio State in the first round. I think I've mentioned that going north for some of these southern teams is definitely a disadvantage. Normally, the college football season from a home and away standpoint wraps up in November, so typically it's done before a lot of the really bad or really cold weather hits. But this year, we're getting some home games well into towards the end of December. So I don't know that it's that big of a difference going from Knoxville to Columbus, but I do think it is supposed to be pretty cold in that game. We're obviously, 10 plus days out from those games, so it's hard to know the weather, but that's a game where I really think the matchup actually favors Tennessee. I think the best part of the Ohio State defense is their secondary, their passing defense, and Tennessee just really wants to run the ball a lot. Their quarterback has not played well on the road, so that definitely scares me a little bit. But I think that getting them at 10 points is maybe a little too much. So I'll probably maybe take a look at Tennessee there. The next one I actually like is Indiana Notre Dame. I can't get to the number of 7.5. I actually think home field in general is under handicapped for these games by quite a significant amount, like maybe 2.5 to 3 points lower than it should be, in my opinion. But from a matchup standpoint, I really think Indiana can slow down Notre Dame, and I just don't think Notre Dame is very good. They haven't played a very tough schedule. They've kind of struggled against the teams that they have played that are pretty good, except that week 1 win over A&M. Indiana had that one game that didn't look very good against Ohio State, but it was pretty competitive. And outside of some special teams plays, it was a lot closer, I think, than people seem to think it was from a scoreboard perspective. So I actually think Indiana's got a puncher's chance there. So I like them at 7.5. The other two games, SMU up at Penn State. I think Penn State's just a lot better than them, and that's a game where I really think a team from Dallas is going to struggle in what is probably some cold, windy weather up there. And then the Clemson against Texas. I think these teams are just not in the same class. Like Texas is boxed with Georgia twice. They didn't look good the first time, but the second time they definitely outplayed them the majority of the game until the backup quarterback from Georgia kind of took over that game. And Clemson got embarrassed, just flat out embarrassed by Georgia again at the beginning of the season. But I just don't think that team's very good. So those two games I wouldn't touch unless I were taking like an alternate spread on the favorite.
Awesome.
Wow.
Cool. Before we flip over to the NFL side of things too, Pace, I've got to mention for all of our listeners out there, especially those that aren't a part of the inplayLIVE community because they don't know about this, but we hit some really big futures in college football this year in the inplayLIVE community, thanks to John, including a 41-1 over the weekend, thanks to the Arizona State Sun Devils, as we like to call them, the Forks, because of the trident symbol. But if you're not part of the inplayLIVE community, that's the kind of stuff you're missing out on. And I can tell you a lot of people in the community really benefited from some of those futures calls. So thanks for those, John.
Well, we learned today that hedging is for gardeners.
Yes,
but one of the things we love at inplayLIVE is where you can make a hedge where you can win both bets. And we touched on this last week about an alternate spread potentially coming through on a hedged parlay instead of just buying out of it completely. The cashing out argument, all that kind of stuff. But John, I don't think you hedged SMU, did you?
I did not. No. Clemson money line was a potential hedge, but if it were a straight up something like that this result will actually hedge it, it's one thing. But it's when it comes down to a committee of people subjectively picking something, I think you just kind of had to trust what we had. Where we basically had SMU plus 7.5 or something at 12-1. What a great bet,
Yes, but separately of that, we mention as the game is approaching, we know the winner of the ACC's in, so there's no concern there. If you have the Clemson future, the SMU future, you can take Clemson money line and you can hedge your bet, right? I didn't think, and we didn't think, we knew it was possible, but that if Clemson won, that SMU would still get in. But it was such a good football game that we pretty much knew there was a really good chance. So, these are the types of discussions that we have where if you had SMU at 12-1, and then you bet Clemson to win the ACC once that final game was announced, you got just an unbelievable scoop. And yes, we called the Arizona State Sun Devils on a live stream late night when we saw how good they looked in the first couple of weeks. So really just a remarkable college football season at inplayLIVE. Just tons and tons of fun. Excited for bowl season here. Bowl season caution, say it every single year in our primers, in our podcast. Don't be surprised if you're a recreational sports bettor and you go to start betting bowl season if teams aren't motivated and don't care about the game that they're playing in, especially with the extended playoff. There's more teams that had hopes for the playoffs this year than in previous years because there's more teams able to get in. So don't be shocked if certain superstar players aren't playing for certain teams, and if your local team doesn't give a shit about the bowl that they're in. So just be careful from a betting standpoint because teams' motivations oftentimes is the difference between value and lack thereof. All right, NFL, John, any games stand out for you?
Yeah, the only bet I've made so far this week is I've already bet the Jags plus 3.5 at home against the Jets. I just don't. In what universe is this 3-9 or 3-12 or 3-10 or whatever this Jets team? How are they 3.5 point favorites on the road? That team sucks. That's hilarious. I think it should be a pick. So 3.5 in the NFL when you think it should be a pick is a gold mine. So I took that. There's other games I'm looking at, but I'm just kind of waiting for more information or the line. I like the Packers -2.5 or less in Seattle. I think I can get -3 at +100 right now. I'm just going to wait. If it doesn't get to 2.5, I just won't play it. But that's what I like there. Lions, I like the Lions at home against the Bills. I just think the people continue to just kind of the Lions aren't covering. So as when the team doesn't cover as a favorite, people kind of just get done with them. There's all this news constantly to people talking about their injuries and all of that. They still keep winning. So I actually think that number is going to get close to a pick. I think it's down to like 1.5 right now. So I'll be interested in the Lions money line if I can get it at normal juice. I like the Chargers -2.5 or better at home against the Bucks. So a lot of chalk so far. I do think the Bucks. I think we're going to talk about this later, but good teaser opportunity. But I do like the Chargers just to win that game. Kind of like the Bengals against the Titans. I think they're -5 right now. I think it should be closer to a touchdown, and maybe that changes. We're recording this on Monday, so after the game tonight with the Bengals, if they have a really good game against the Cowboys, maybe that line actually moves up. So I might go ahead and grab that 5. The Titans are just really bad. And the Bengals don't have a great record, but I think we all agree they're probably a lot better and more talented than that Titans team. And the other game I've almost bet, but I think I'm just going to wait and see if I get 16 is the Giants at home against the Ravens. It's 15 right now. Would love 16. This game really doesn't matter that much to the Ravens. They have the Steelers at home next week. I think it's just go to New York, get a win, get out of there, and then just go ahead and start preparing for the most important game left on their schedule with a chance to come back and win that division. Those are the games that I like the most this week. I think there's a lot of sharp lines. I don't show a ton of value on really any of those lines. But I do think those are the good numbers and the good sides.
Yeah, awesome stuff. And if you listened to our advice from last week about the Bucks to win the division, you can now look into hedging if you wanted to. We won't be hedging on our side, but we're now ahead. The Bucks are winning the division just like that. So what a swing in the NFC South. All right, guys, teaser time. Another teaser win last week, and just with some line movement that came through. Sunday morning, we released a couple of ads to that as well, which all happened to come through. And a huge shout out to the Jets for a situation where they could have just taken 4 knees and kicked a field goal and left 15 seconds for their opponent. Instead, they went out of bounds and left Miami enough time to almost win the game in regulation, but then tie it and win it in overtime. Just unbelievably bad coaching and execution there. And believe it or not, it was Devontae Adams that stepped out of bounds there. So there's 8 games for teasers this week that I think fit the bill. I'm just going to run through those games really quickly. The Rams on the plus side, the Dolphins on the plus side. You could say the Commandos on the minus side. That brings us to 9. Either side of the Steelers-Eagles game. The Bills on the plus side, the Bucks on the plus side, the Cards on the minus side, and Seattle on the plus side, and the Vikings on the minus side. That's actually 9 games. I'm going to just narrow this down because there's just some things that scare me here. And to be honest with you, even with the 3 picks I'm about to make for the official one this week, there are a couple red flags where I'm just like, geez, I don't like this game. But I got to take the Bucks plus 9. Hopefully that can get to even potentially a little bit higher. But as we're recording this, Bucks plus 9, Seattle plus 9 at home. I think that Packers-Seahawks game is almost a playoff game for both of those teams for obvious reasons. And then the Vikings at home, which is a part of the Monday night doubleheader. That will be down to -0.5. So I think those 3 picks will hopefully keep us rolling. Make sure you have a good book that's paying out plus 160 on those 3 pick parlays. And as always, with anything that we call or are looking at pregame, you're going to get the best odds and the lowest margins at pinnacle.com/inplayLIVE.
That's right, /inplayLIVE to sign up over at Pinnacle. And if you're already signed up, you'll get the very best odds there. I'm sure you'll be able to get the odds that Pace just mentioned there over some of those other soft books. Okay. Advent calendar. So this is something happening within the inplayLIVE community. Again, if you're not part of our community, come on in, see what it's all about. This Advent calendar is a way to get some prizes daily, right, Pace? You've been handing out prizes, and it all leads up to one big prize. Very quickly, if people aren't familiar with it, what is it? How does it work?
Yeah, so it's December. It's a great time for betting. It really is. We have everything running, and then of course we have the holidays. It's just an awesome time. So every single day, members are given a new challenge. If they complete that challenge, they get entered into a giveaway on stream that night for swag, jerseys, cards, whatever it is that we're giving away. But then those entries accumulate and compound throughout the month, where we'll be giving away a grand prize to join us at Bet Bash this summer, which should be a ton of fun and hopefully something that also helps people grow in their own betting journeys.
There we go. All right. Well, the Advent calendar challenge for today is post a link of this episode on your social media, screen grab it, send it over to Sabrina. Maybe caption it with something that you were able to take away from the episode, something that you like. Maybe it comes from Tom, or maybe it's the teaser that Pace just mentioned. You could put that out there on socials as well. Maybe it's your teaser record tailing the teasers that are brought up here on the podcast. Comment something that you're taking away from the show. Post a link to the episode, screen grab, send it to Sabrina. Pace, did I miss anything there?
No, I mean, the more posts you have, like one per channel. So if you can post to X, you'll get an entry. If you post to Instagram, you get an entry. Facebook, you get an entry, etc.
Beautiful. Multiple ways to get your name in there for today's prize. All right. Well, with that, Pace, John, sports bettors around the world, sports bettors in the UK who may be tuned in for Tom Brownlee. Till next week. Keep eating those books. Thanks for tuning in to another episode of Behind the Lines. Remember to like, download, and subscribe. We are on YouTube, Apple, Spotify, and everywhere you get your podcasts. Have a betting story or want to be featured on our podcast? Drop a note in the comments below. And if you want to join In Play Live, use promo code Behind the Lines.